I would like to set up some sort of meeting at some point with interested parties, either people who are interested in putting maybe some money into it, or people who've got specific expertise in electronics or physics or electrolysis or software even, to come together and perhaps we can set up a working group to investigate the Myers technology and other technologies. Now there are a number of groups that have been set up, and the reason why I laugh is because I don't trust any of them, and I think they're there to see what people are doing and see what's going on. But this group will not be that. This group will be we're trying to get scientific proof that over unity is achievable.
You are going to need a number of minds on this, get some skilled people together that can solve different parts of the problem. But as you mentioned in the video there, the groups that have been in operation on and off over the last probably 50 years, they haven't really achieved very much. And there are certain individuals which don't seem to be that trustworthy, and I think we were talking, we'll just mention very briefly Stephen Greer's group in the States. He tried to get some things going, and I've written a whole article about that called Something in the Aero, where I became very, very skeptical of what he was doing. And then also we've more recently had a group in the UK which was kind of an offshoot of this BCG, which is the British Constitution Group, which is itself associated with UK Column and Brian Gerrish. But they are more focused on political objectives, and for example aspects of things like common law and this sort of thing. And of course Brian Gerrish has done a lot of good work in that area, and he's tried to be a champion for certain causes which have been fighting corruption.
Now they set up this energy group a few years ago, which I believe is not running at the moment. It's disbanded or whatever.
Right.
And I did see one guy being interviewed by Brian Gerrish. He was talking about this new type of battery, which I believe used aluminium as a fuel. So it was a battery which you can't actually recharge using electricity. You had to remove a physical part of it and then replace it. And its unique selling point was that it lasted longer than a normal battery, or stored more power per volume, let's say.
Yes.
But not really solving the world's energy crisis. But you have to manufacture the aluminium or whatever the fuel is, which requires energy in. So it's not an over-unity device. Certainly not getting energy from the vacuum. Just a different type of battery using a solid fuel as opposed to a liquid
kind
fuel.
Or some catalyst within the aluminium or something to give it a higher energy dentity or something within the materials.
Now you got involved, or you got invited to one of their conferences, and you met this character called Mike Clark.
Clark. We should tell the story of that, and I've told the story of this in a couple of the presentations I've done since. You and I last discussed this topic on your program. I think it would have been back. It was in 2012. I think we did the program. I believe in September 2012, Richard. So just over 2 years ago now. And it was, I think, literally 2 or 3 weeks after that I did a talk in Birmingham about the free energy, Stan Meyer that you've talked about just now, and you mentioned Adam Trombley's device. I touched on all those things in the presentation as well. And it was after that meeting that this Mike Clark came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm Mike Clark. I'm a PhD physicist. I'm associated with the British Constitution Group. We're setting up this energy group to investigate energy technologies. Would you like to be involved?" And I said, yeah, I'd be interested in getting involved. And I met him in the pub, I think after this time, a couple of months later. And he said, "Oh yeah, we're getting some guys together and we're going to have this meeting." And I think this meeting was originally slated for, I think, late November or December 2012 or something. I can't remember when. And he also invited me to speak at the BCG conference, which was in November 2012. And this was attended by about 300 to 400 people at a hotel in Stoke. It was one of the largest audiences I've ever spoken to face to face, certainly.
Well, can I just stop you there, Andrew? Let's just have a look at what Mike Clark actually says in his intro, yeah?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Roger, for letting me speak. My name is Michael Clark. I am a retired scientist, physicist by profession. So I have an inherent interest in energy systems, and in particularly alternative energy systems, which have been hidden from us, deliberately. Now, a person better qualified than me to speak about new energy devices and how they were suppressed is Andrew Johnson, who I will introduce in a moment. But I will say this final thing. We are currently working on fuel devices that are classed as over unity. In other words, more energy out than in. We should have something by 2015 that will allow every individual that's part of the BCG or lawful bank to install a unit into their homes and derive free electricity. You will never have to be on the grid. Thank you. Thank you. We haven't done it yet, but we hopefully will do it. Everything's looking very, very positive at the moment. All the results we've had so far have been positive, and I'll keep all members of BCG through Roger and his newsletter up to date on what's going on. Now, the key element of having a device like that, whether it's going to be magnetic or a water fuel cell, which are some of the things we're working on, the key element of having a device like that is that we can offer it to non-members as an incentive to join Lawful Bank and British Constitution Group. Who in their right mind is going to turn down a unit that's going to give them free electricity? Nobody. So what a great carrot to swell the membership. Come and join us. We'll make sure you get one of these things. You will never have to pay electricity again. You can come off the grid. We don't want to give it back to them because we don't want anything to do with them, to be perfectly honest.
Right, so very clear statement there. By 2015, he's going to have an over-unity device that people who join the BCG group can install in their houses and get free electricity.
Pretty categorical, yeah. But he wasn't very clear in that statement whether it was going to be a water fuel cell such as the one you were explaining, the operation of in your video, or whether it was going to be some type of magnetic motor. But yeah, it was clear, and I thought, oh great, if they've got that far, then fantastic. There's obviously things that I don't know about. But he didn't disclose any of those details to me personally at that time in November 2012, and I didn't really see anything of him until next March 2013, I think it would have been. And he set up this meeting for about 10 or 12 people. And originally he said they were going to have some office space, and they were going to have a water fuel cell demonstration by this lady, I think was called Victoria, or I can't remember her second name. She had allegedly got one fitted to her car and was using it, and that was going to be demonstrated to the rest of us, so I was looking forward to seeing that. But then apparently this woman pulled out. We didn't see that working. We had this meeting, an agenda was sent out with about 10 points on the agenda. When we started the meeting, it started an hour late, and I thought, are we really going to get through this before the 4 o'clock finish? The agenda that he gave out wasn't followed. I think we covered 1 or 2 of the points out of a list of about 8 or 9. There was another chap there called Oliver Smith. The meeting was recorded. There were several people that recorded it, and all the attendees knew that the meeting was being recorded, because I just got my voice recorder out. Either I was holding it or I'd put it on the table in front of everybody, so they knew it was being recorded.
I'm going to call a close to the meeting, gentlemen.
Well, before you do that, Mike, could I just ask if there's any, because you mentioned previously, I was curious, that you've been involved with some water fuel cell development a few years ago. And
yeah, about 5 years ago.
I just wondered if there's any, so obviously if anybody with experience like that can be fed into this process. I mean,
no, not really.
Why would that be?
Because The tank cell is a much simpler and I think much more efficient way of moving forward, rather than trying to do high frequency electricity and pulsing it and messing around with it until you get exactly what you want.
So you're saying then from that development your experience was that you were using this...
It produced gas, but not very efficiently.
Right.
I think we were using 1.7 volts and 200 milliamps was our input current, and we were producing gas from a standalone cell, very much like mine that he shows on his papers and his videos.
Was that your goal to sort of reproduce the Maya cell?
My goal today...
Sorry, then.
At that point it was purely an experiment.
Right.
It was purely to, what's this all about? Let's have a look at it. We built it and it worked, after a fashion. That's not what I want to do.
Right, was this
WFC is just a means to an end here.
Yeah.
We're looking for the most efficient way, whether it's WFC or not. It doesn't make no difference what the method is, as long as we achieve the desired result, which is to provide energy for people for free.
So in your opinion then, from that development previously, you think that was sort of...
No, I don't think it's not a way forward.
Right.
I don't think you could produce sufficient gas in quantity to drive the motor, to drive the electricity generator.
Right.
This has the tank cell is far better.
And was that you and a good group of guys, or was it?
Yeah, it was just about 3 or 4 friends.
Right.
We just got together, and lots of things we were doing at the time, not just WFC, lots of stuff. We built a little magnetic motor that was continually running, but not producing an awful lot of energy. But it was working on its own without any further input. But I think the tank cell has got the better possibility of actually achieving what we want to achieve quickly.
And you heard in the clip there that he said they didn't have a device. He had worked on water fuel cell development about 5 years ago, so we're saying 2008, but they didn't have anything that they felt they could take forward into a new development. So essentially, it contradicted what he said 5 months earlier at the BCG meeting. He provided no evidence that he had any devices in development.
So it sounds like this promise of a working device by 2015 was a completely empty promise.
Yes, I think quite a few people were obviously disappointed by that, as one would be. But I was obviously trying to think, what was the reason behind this? Why was he trying to approach me and get me involved in this, when clearly there was nothing of any substance that was in development? I mean, it just seemed like yet another empty vessel.